Something happened to me on a public bus here in Canada.
Women are being harassed in public spaces.
So people in Toronto are panicking. They're saying violence has gone up. They're worried about the robberies, the killings, the stabbings on the TTC.
Well, Toronto, public transit is not safe.
There are problems, especially around, some of the C train stations.
If you're an Edmontonian and have been complaining about the safety concerns while taking public transport, then you're not alone.
If you are in Metro Vancouver and you've been watching the news, you've probably thought twice about taking a bus recently.
So violent attacks on public transit in Canada.
Downtown, whether it be by train, plane, automobile, downtown Toronto is an absolute disaster.
It's almost on a daily basis that I experience or witness somebody else experiencing some sort of harassment.
Welcome to the Canadian Rant. Transit in Canada was once a symbol of safety, reliability, and community. Today, it's becoming something else entirely. A worrying new report shows transit systems across the country are becoming dramatically less safe, and the numbers are terrifying. In some major cities, transit violence has surged nearly 300% in just 1 year. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a trend, a pattern, a warning. Assaults, harassment, random attacks on riders, and even transit workers, happening in broad daylight, on routes people take to work, to school, to home. Riders now say they avoid certain stations, avoid entire routes, travel only during specific hours, because safety can no longer be assumed. And it's not hard to understand why. Experts are blaming rising mental health crises, overcrowded shelters, addiction struggles, and a lack of the police presence on public transit. Transit used to take us where we needed to go. Now, it feels like it's taking us into danger. So today we're going to talk about what's really happening, why it's happening, and what this says about the direction Canada is heading.
It's almost on a daily basis that I experience or witness somebody else experiencing some sort of harassment. I was sexually berated and harassed for several minutes and then followed onto the train.
Seeing thousands of assaults and acts of violence against transit professionals across this country every year. In the last number of months after the pandemic, these numbers have increased exponentially. We need to tackle this. Our members are scared. Our transit workers across this country are fearful for their lives. The assaults are becoming more and more concerning, more and more violent.
A scary morning scene here in Côte-des-Neiges, NDG, as an electric school bus went up in flames. Just before 8 o'clock, several calls were made to 911 about this fire near the corner of Victoria Avenue and Jean Talon Street West. The fire department says the driver had just turned on the heating in the bus when he noticed a strange smell and smoke coming out of the vents, and he didn't take any chances. The fire department says the blaze was not linked to the electric vehicle's battery, but rather the vehicle's heating system. We reached out to the Quebec company that makes the bus, Lion, who refused to grant an interview. They wrote back saying, quote, Lion is conducting an analysis to understand the circumstances of the event. Lion has nothing to add at the moment. When the financially troubled company announced being acquired in May, it said maintenance services for its buses would gradually resume. We asked the company about current maintenance operations and they didn't answer.
General PSA to people of Toronto, public transit is not safe, nor has it been safe for a while. Like, just because the news is not covering it as much anymore does not mean that we actually solve the issues. Because believe it or not, now crazy thought here, but not doing anything to address the violence on the subway other than putting a police horse outside said subway station did not solve the problems. Like, who would have thought that would have happened? Like, who really would have thought? And I just think it's really ironic that we as Canadians always look over at what's going on in America and being like, oh, well, the solution is very simple to solve mass shootings, get rid of guns. Well, the solution here is very simple as well, and yet we're not doing it, which is that we need to make housing affordable. We need affordability in general, along with mental health supports and more funding for public transit so people aren't waiting on the subways to get harmed. Because this past weekend, a 16-year-old kid was killed, like stabbed to death. So yeah, Toronto has not been safe, nor is it safe.
If you're an Edmontonian and have been complaining about the safety concerns while taking public transport, then you're not alone. According to a new survey, Edmontonians are the most concerned about their safety on transit systems in Canada, and shockingly, 17% of Albertans are avoiding using transit completely. And the province has allotted $63 million over the next 2 years as a part of an urban public safety and community intervention strategy.
So people in Toronto are panicking. They're saying violence has gone up. They're worried about the robberies, the killings, the stabbings on the TTC. And for those who don't know, the TTC is basically public transportation in Toronto. First of all, let me say that Toronto is extremely liberal to the point where it'll probably be the downfall of the city. But I'm solely speaking in terms of morals when I say that. But when you look at Toronto from the standpoint of opportunities, I would say there's very few places in the country or even the world that could compete. Too many people complain about the insane cost of living, but not enough people acknowledge the ridiculous amount of opportunities. But when it comes to the violence, that's just a result of people pushing for the removal of religion in the city. Nobody believes in a higher power. They think the government should protect them. There's the gender war, and nobody believes in a strong family unit anymore. So morally, Toronto is destroyed. But if you're looking for opportunities, it's very much alive.
Women are being harassed in public spaces.
It's a TikTok trend called subway shirts. Women who have been harassed on public transit sharing videos of the oversized shirts they wear to avoid becoming the target of unwanted attention.
Where I'm wearing something that's like nice for the club, and then after I wear like a longer coat or jacket or like sweater to cover up because I just feel like I have to be modest or else something bad could happen.
I think that it's like horrendous that we even have to do that.
It's a shame that people feel like so uncomfortable that they have to cover themselves up.
Andrea Gunraj with the Canadian Women's Foundation says there's little evidence to suggest the TikTok method is effective and worries it could be perceived as victim blaming.
Society puts you in, and then it's a person taking advantage of that to feel powerful.
Gunraj says women shouldn't be judged for subway shirts or any move that makes them feel more safe.
Something happened to me on a public bus here in Canada. A man started yelling, aggressive, loud, using awful language. I look around, expecting someone to react, but nobody did. People just stared in their phone, like nothing was happening. Back home in Ukraine, someone would stepped in. 2-3 people. No way. We'd let that go in silence. Canadians are polite, yes. But sometimes silence isn't kindness. It's fear, and honestly, I felt alone.
I am so annoyed, y'all, because OC Transport be pissing me off. Like, y'all buses is never on time. The train is always broken. You guys spent millions of dollars for what? And donated or gifted all the damn buses. I've been waiting for a bus for like 20 minutes. How is there supposed to be 2 buses and they're both late? So annoying. Like, Ottawa, OC Transport, y'all gotta do better. So annoying.
This message goes out to anybody that has to commute downtown, whether it be by train, plane, automobile. Downtown Toronto is an absolute disaster. I was on the GO train yesterday, and if you were on that train, shout out to you, let me know. But we were stuck for over 2 hours on the Barrie line. I missed 2 minutes of the puck drop of the Canada game. The whole train was silent the whole time until I eventually lost it and said, I'm gonna lose my parlay and I'm gonna miss the game. And then I said, it's not about the fact that it's delayed. It's the fact that nobody's coming on the PA system to say why we're delayed, what the hell's going on, when our expected arrival is. We're left in the dark. The windows are fogging up. People are breaking down. There's lineups to go to the washroom. People are sweating. Smells like BO. It was a disaster. Somebody downloaded a Compass app or some bullshit. They were trying to become an engineer and tell us where the train was going. Shout out to that guy, legend. But my gosh, you got to go anywhere. These politicians, they want you to take public transit. Half the people work at home now and they still can't handle the capacity. Imagine if everybody didn't work from home and then more people were off the roads, not driving, and had to take these trains. Are you kidding me? We're on top of each other like a fucking tuna. Like we're in a can of tuna. It's insane. Sardines over here. Look, all I know is people work from home 2 days a week, usually downtown now. And honestly, I could see why people want it to be 5. I'm a proponent of, I think people do work better in the office. But if your employees are spending 1/3 of their day commuting And they're stuffed on these trains like sardines, or they're bumper to bumper on the road. I don't blame people for wanting to stay home. It's incredible. It's incredible. Thank God Canada won. And you know what? We hit those parlays and the boys were flying yesterday. Other than that, it was a total disaster. Get your shit together, Metrolinx. Get your shit together, TTC. Oh, it's a disaster. Olivia Chow, I blame you. What a disaster.
If you're in Metro Vancouver and you've been watching the news, you've probably thought twice about taking a bus recently. In April, there were a series of violent assaults on transit in Metro Vancouver, including the fatal stabbing of a teenager in Surrey. This led to a huge amount of media attention about safety on public transportation. The Premier spoke about it, police promised more patrols, and the sense that you got was that public transportation had never been more dangerous. When you crunch the numbers, that's not actually true. The number of assaults is up, but when you compare it to the number of people actually taking transit, the rate of assaults is down. That's because huge numbers of people stopped taking transit during the first 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic and have since restarted. Unions we spoke to said their members are legitimately worried about violence on transit, but what they're also worried about are social problems like homelessness, mental health crises, or the toxic drug crisis that are increasingly appearing in the public transportation system. One criminologist we talked to said it contributes to a feeling that transit is less safe, even if that's not true statistically. My name's Zach, I report on labor for the Tyee, and you can read the full story in our bio. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more stories like this.
What would make you feel more safe?
Probably if the city addressed the root of the problem of why so many people are getting attacked.
So violent attacks on public transit in Canada. I've seen so many tips on TikTok about how I can protect myself on the TTC. It's easy to feel scared. And it's not just here in Toronto. Across the country, in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, there have been stories about random attacks on public transit workers and on riders. The Amalgamated Transit Union in Canada represents 35,000 transit workers. Its president says these attacks have reached a crisis level. So what's going on? Municipal and transit officials have linked the attacks to a lack of support for mental health and addiction issues, all of which have increased in the pandemic. Homelessness has also gone up, and with that, both community workers and transit providers are saying people are turning to transit to seek shelter, particularly in the winter months. So what's being done right now? Mainly more security and more police presence. Toronto, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, and Edmonton have all stepped up the number of officers on their transit systems. Some transit providers like Calgary's have added more so-called ambassador programs to put more visible staff on platforms and make riders feel at ease. They also can report issues if they see them happening. Other cities like Toronto and Edmonton have partnered with outreach programs to help those on transit experiencing homelessness to find shelter or permanent housing. But not all public transit advocates are on board with the boost in policing. They say it doesn't really get to the root of the problem.
The main thing that their presence does is deter people from riding transit if they are poor, if they're unhoused.
We know from TTC data that Black and Indigenous transit users, they're and I quote from the report, they're grossly misrepresented in enforcement interactions. What we'd like to see is an expansion of more supportive staff. Right now, there is no budget to expand supports into the transit system. Something like that could, have people that are trained in crisis intervention and mental health de-escalation.
The Amalgamated Transit Union is asking for a national task force involving all levels of government to tackle what it calls out-of-control violence. The president of that union says there were about 3,000 assaults on transit operators alone last year. He wants this national task force to not only consider more policing on transit, but also more funding for mental health supports in the community. So how are you feeling about transit where you live? Let us know in the comments.
This cell phone video captures the moments after a fatal stabbing on a Winnipeg bus. A witness told CBC News a passenger lunged at the victim as he got up to leave. 57-year-old Raymond Wesley Hill died from his injuries. It happened near here at the corner of Balmoral and Ellis, and it's far from an isolated incident. Violence on transit is up in cities across Canada, but in Winnipeg, it's way up, nearly tripling in less than a decade, and higher than any other city. A review of Statistics Canada's uniform crime reporting data shows violence on buses or near transit stops rose 281% from 2016 to 2024. The average for the 8 large cities included in the analysis was 88%.
Well, it's upsetting, disturbing a little bit, but not all that much of a surprise.
Transit Union President Chris Scott says drivers have tracked rising violence on buses for years, with weapons increasingly being used in assaults. Using location data from the Winnipeg Police Service, CBC mapped out where each incident occurred, the vast majority concentrated in the downtown neighborhoods of South Portage and Portage Ellis. Councillor Janice Lukes chairs the Public Works Committee. She says the high number of incidents downtown reflects the broader social challenges facing central Winnipeg.
Sure, there's addictions all over the city, there's crime all over the city, but the concentration of it is in these areas. And this is reflective, I think, of what's going on our buses in these areas.
Data from Winnipeg Police showed the number of incidents peaked in 2023, with a slight decrease last year. Lukes attributes that drop in part to the city launching its community safety teams, with the focus on transit safety. But the union says numbers this year show the trend heading in the wrong direction.
They're showing us that the number of acts of violence are increasing to the point where they may even surpass this year the record set in 2023.
Winnipeg Transit writer Lucas Lambert says most daytime university routes feel safe, but that changes at night, particularly downtown.
It's more the safety coming off the bus that's the problem, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Like waiting at the bus stop?
Yeah, at the bus stops.
The city of Winnipeg took new steps this year to try to curb violence. Winnipeg Police announced in September they would begin patrolling buses in and out of uniform. The city has also stepped up fare enforcement. It says much of the safety concerns involve people who have not paid for the bus.
Today I'm at the University of Calgary asking students, do you feel safe on Calgary Transit and in your community?
Yeah, and I don't really use transit, but I know that there are problems, especially around, some of the C train stations, just the people there. It's not safe for everybody. So I would say that if I were to travel, no, I wouldn't feel safe.
I feel safe, 10 being very safe.
Yeah.
Having an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
I feel safe.
You would promote the safety of Calgary as something that's awesome.
100%, man.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on where you live. I live in a rural community, so I'm pretty safe out there.
Yeah.
But transit, I drive. I don't take public transit, so it's chill for that. But yeah, I'd say about 8 or 9 for me.
Yes and no. Because I live in the Northeast, so crime is always there's always stuff going on there. People just constantly just ruining everything, littering, doing this, and extortion rates have gone up exponentially over the past few years too.
Yeah.
So I personally also don't take transit. I just drive. Because my parents are just concerned, if something happens on transit, we don't want you being injured or anything. We just want you to be safe.
I would say in general, yes, but I won't take transit after dark. But the only time I would is when it's December and it's 5 p.m. and it's dark out.
Is enough. That is the message from the transit union tonight after another driver was assaulted yesterday. It's the latest incident in an already violent year on transit. CTV's Daniel Helmerson reports.
A Winnipeg transit driver was assaulted on this route in East Kildonan Monday afternoon.
We have had the opportunity to talk to him. It certainly appears that he's still yet to fully process what has happened. He was treated for injuries in the hospital.
Transit Union President Chris Scott says the driver, a man in his 40s with about 18 years of experience on the job, wasn't seriously hurt, but Scott worries about the mental toll incidents like this can take.
We anticipate if he comes back driving at all, it'll be a long time before he's back or drive behind the wheel of a bus.
According to Winnipeg Police, the driver was assaulted by a passenger around 2 o'clock Monday afternoon near Gateway and Springfield Road. When officers arrived, they found the injured driver, who was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Chris Scott says the unions learned a weapon was involved, however, police would not confirm that.
We're pulling our hair out trying to figure out what action is needed to get this to finally stop.
According to the transit union, there have been 221 safety incidents on buses so far this year involving passengers or transit employees.
Roughly 90 are attacks directly to the operator. Actually, it's not even just operators. We are also having our maintenance staff attacked while they're out on the road trying to repair buses.
The 221 incident total has already surpassed last year with 2 months to go, and it's on trend to eclipse 2023's record of 257. Scott says the presence of police and community safety officers on transit is helping, but says full barriers are needed to protect bus drivers. Mayor Scott Gillingham says his thoughts are with the driver and his family and vows the city's working to make transit safer for everyone.
We certainly are in ongoing conversations with the union. They do have shields now, like half shields. We talked about moving to some full shields as well. Again, don't know the details of this incident, but our conversations continue with the union as well.
Daniel Halmerson, CTV News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Police Service's Major Crimes Unit is investigating. No word yet if a suspect has been identified or arrested. A police spokesperson says more information on this.
If there's one message today's story makes painfully clear, it's this. Canada is no longer the country where safety is guaranteed. When stepping onto a bus or train, something millions of people do every day becomes a moment of fear, hesitation, and calculation, it tells us everything about where we're heading as a nation. Transit used to be a lifeline. It connected families, workers, students, seniors. It was supposed to make life easier, cheaper, predictable. But now, it has become another reminder that Canada is cracking under its own weight. When violence on transit rises nearly 300% in 1 year, that's not a coincidence. That's a society calling for help. Politicians talk about investments and plans for the future, but Canadians are not living in the future. We are living in the crisis right now. Someone who's terrified on the bus today doesn't care about safety improvements promised 5 years down the road. A transit worker being threatened today can't wait for a safety strategy that's still in committee. The truth is, this crisis didn't appear overnight. It's the result of years of ignoring everyday people, ignoring warning signs, ignoring the voices of riders who said, things don't feel safe anymore. And now the consequences are finally loud enough that no one can hide from them. But here's what matters most. Your voice is powerful. Politicians don't improve systems unless the public demands it. If we stay silent, things continue exactly as they are. If we speak up, loudly, consistently, unapologetically, change becomes impossible to ignore. So now I want to hear from you. Not the headlines, not the experts, you. The people riding these buses and trains every day, do you feel safe on transit? Have you ever witnessed violence or harassment? Do you avoid certain routes or travel only at certain times? And most importantly, what do you think needs to change? Thank you for watching the Canadian Rant. And please don't forget, like the video, subscribe, and share it so more Canadians know the truth.